I want to introduce now our panel. Let me introduce our moderator, Anthony Mao. Anthony is a restorative aquaculture biologist with the Department of Land and Natural Resources and vice president of the Aquaculture and Aquaponics Association, and he's also the founder of Kupu Place. We're fortunate to have Anthony guiding the conversation. He brings unique perspective that connects traditional knowledge, modern science, and on-the-ground experience. His work is deeply rooted in restoring Hawaii's nearshore ecosystems while advancing sustainable aquaculture practices that serve local communities. As we explore how to grow an aquaculture system that feeds Hawaiʻi First, he'll help guide us through what it takes to balance production with responsibility, ensuring our efforts strengthen food security and also cares for the ocean systems we depend on. Join me in welcoming Anthony Mao.
Okay. You guys comfortable? Everyone comfortable here? So we want to start by meeting our industry and community leaders here with me on the left on the stage. Please take 30 seconds to introduce yourselves, give us a brief background. We'll start with you, Mika.
I'm Mika Brodsky. I'm the state aquaculture veterinarian with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity.
Thank you, Mika. Jeff, you're next. Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Jeff Garvey, the agriculture teacher at Waipahu High School. And I'm a fisherman, surfer, and aquaculture guy.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Next, Brenda.
Aloha, I'm Brenda Lima. I'm from Waipio and Eva here in Oahu. I work for a nonprofit called Kua Aina Ulu Awamo, and I coordinate a network of lokoi'a across the islands. They're called Hui Malama Lokoi'a.
Yes, sir. Wrapping up our panelists, joining us is Federico or Fedi.
Hi, everyone. Federico Rotman from Blue Ocean Mariculture that Neil gracefully introduced for me. Thank you, Neil. I'm the vice president of hatchery operations, so I'm in charge of producing all the baby kampachi that then go into those cages that you saw.
Thank you, Fedi. So we're gonna go around and ask some questions, and it'll be one after another. There's some fun questions for you guys, and hopefully we get some great responses. So we'll start with you, Mika. From a biosecurity and animal health perspective, what are the biggest risks associated with expanding aquaculture in Hawaii? And how can we scale local production while safeguarding native ecosystems and wild fish populations?
So if we take a strictly biosecurity and animal health perspective, the biggest risks are the introduction of invasive species and the introduction of infectious diseases. The primary source for this is the movement of animals, moving live animals from one location to another. But there are lots of reasons or lots of ways that can occur, and it is not necessarily specifically associated with agricultural activities. So, for example, we here in Hawaii export disease-free shrimp broodstock and seed all over the world. We have very clear biosecurity and management practices that over the course of the last 40 years or so have resulted in building this incredible reputation globally that has served really as the foundation for nearly all farmed shrimp globally for 30 years. And so there are a number of different areas where it's important to focus management for disease and biosecurity activities. And diseases can be moved as a result of moving at live animals for agricultural purposes, but you can also get disease introduction from ballast water in ships, or invasive species. Commonly occurs the movement of invasive species from ballast water in ships. Other potential sources for disease movements are migratory wildlife. So migratory birds, for example, we may have heard about avian influenza or avian malaria here in Hawaii. That is associated with migratory wildlife movements. And so if we want to look at how to scale up aquaculture but reduce those risks, I think a big piece of that really is looking at trying to identify and utilize local species, native species here in Hawaii. Those species co-evolved with the diseases that exist here normally, because disease is a normal part of any environment. Pathogens, bacteria, viruses, fungus, that's a normal part of ocean environments. And so it's really important, or we can reduce risks associated with disease introductions by utilizing species that co-evolved in these environments. And then the only other final part of this would be to make it financially and operationally viable for producers to operate under good biosecurity, like operate under good biosecure conditions, and make it functional for them to be able to do that operationally.
Quick question. What about imported seafood?
So that's a great question.
Disease vector.
Seafood, not just seafood, but live animals and seafood that is shipped globally and moved across international and/or state borders is certainly a source for disease. And the reason for that, or the primary driver of that, is that those animals are being moved into the human food stream, and the primary focus is on identifying and/or preventing introduction of diseases or pathogens that cause human disease. But very little focus in that arena is put on identifying diseases that have the potential to infect other animals in an agricultural setting.
Mahalo for that. Jeff, you're next. How are your students engaged with aquaculture at Waipahu High School? And how do you see education shaping the next generation of local producers who help reduce Hawaii's reliance on imported seafood?
So, a lot of question there. Well,
What's happening?
keeping them engaged, being that I was working in a shrimp hatchery for many, many years. As an educator, working on my second career after shrimp farming, I had curriculum in my mind. I didn't have to really work on that part, running on the theory that I'm going to teach my students exactly what I did as a shrimp hatchery manager. And, you know, I was lucky enough to have that background going into teaching it, and it allowed me to pick and choose, because if you're in aquaculture, you know that there's many processes, many details, there's many SOPs, there's all these things, these many moving parts, connections. And as a teacher, I was able to start very simply, pull out one thing at a time out of that knowledge bank that I gained at the shrimp hatchery. And I just started out real simple. And we started out with tilapia and aquarium fish and teaching them water quality. And then I started seeing that, they're really taking to it. And I had many detractors say, these students are going to spit in the tank. They're going to break things. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. No. They took it and ran with it. The thing, though, where do they go from there? They get excited, then where? There's not a clear path to this business. And it's all up to all of us to create clear objectives, a clear path for these kids to go. Because how is aquaculture going to expand?
It's a great question. Thank you for providing those opportunities for our students. All right, Brenda, I was reading your question earlier. How can the restoration and stewardship of local i'a inform sustainable local seafood production while strengthening our ecosystem health, the community resilience and cultural connection, and long-term food security here at home?
I think for this question, what I wanted to say is that the things in the second part of the question actually lead to the sustainable seafood production. You know, so what Loko i'a teach us is that ecosystem health has to be first. Caring for the resources that Loko i'a are built on has to come first before thinking about the production of food. And then the second thing, community cohesion. Loko i'a teach us that it's not just about the food that's grown within them, but providing access to networks of relationships in our communities. And that's a really important part of what sustainable food production is too. We saw that a lot in the past few weeks, what was happening in our communities after the flooding. The people taking care of each other were the ones that had existing relationships, and those networks are a part of long-term, food sustainability, or, you know, resilience. And then the third thing, cultural connection. Loko i'a, I think what people really find when they have the opportunity to interact with Loko i'a and engage with the people who are caring for Loko i'a, they see that these places aren't stagnant cultural sites, that they're part of a living innovation, a living kind of real infrastructure of a food system. And that's really something that people can hold on to and feel like they connect with an aspect of the culture of this place, but that's relevant for their lives, and that can contribute to what we think of as sustainable food production. So yeah, I think it's more that, you know, any contemporary ventures, what they can take away from those lessons to incorporate into what they interpret as food production can really be like valuable things that Loko i'a can teach us all.
Mahalo for that. Yeah, it's super important, all those things that you just said. There's a lot of values that we take from the cultural side for, you know, our more for-profit entities, as you will, or commercial producers, and I think that grounds us in some of the work that we do. Next up is Federico. How does locally farmed kampachi compare on factors what consumers care most about? You know, like freshness, origin, production practices, and what elements of your approach from broodstock to harvest make it distinct from other seafood options that we have here?
Great. I'm going to flip that to start with production, talk about origin and freshness. So production is, you know, it's what I do for a living. I'm in charge of producing the juvenile fish that eventually go into the net pens that Neil was showing. And it's a really important part of I believe, of our sustainability and our impact that we have on seafood in Hawaii. In particular, we really try to be as transparent to the consumer and to the community on what we're doing out there. For example, at the hatchery, you know, we have all locally sourced broodstock. All the parent fish that we get our eggs from have been caught just offshore of Kona there. You know, we have 4 production runs per year of juvenile fish that end up going into those net pens. And we really work very carefully to control, monitor, and have the healthiest animals possible go out into those net pens and then keep them healthy out there. And that process, in my perspective, is a really important part for the consumer to know what we're doing. Another important aspect there is origin. Like I've mentioned, the broodstock that we started production with are caught right offshore there from Kona. We control their life from hatch to harvest. So really make sure that we know and their consumers know what the origin of these animals is, what the food is. Also, the origin has a great impact on local community, local jobs. Not only do we ourselves employ, I think these days we're right around, I want to say about 60, 65 employees. Those are direct jobs. There's also a whole bunch of indirect jobs all around the community. I can speak for myself that the amount of contractors that I hire on a weekly basis to fix everything that we break it's never ending. So we not only keep our employees employed, but a bunch of other people. And finally, the freshness aspect here. We're 24 to 48 hours from harvest to delivery. So it's a really rapid turnaround. We're harvesting twice a week. We harvest to order to ensure that there's no product sitting around. We don't freeze any of our fish. It's all kept fresh on ice, cold. And that really ensures that the quality makes it to the finish line. And what was the second part of that one, which I only have 30 seconds for?
You hit it. It's like what's the element and like the approach that you take to ensure those qualities?
There you go. Yep. Hit it. Thanks.
Standout product for sure. Right on. Thank you, Federico. Second round of questions here. Our next question is for Mika. Up to bat. As Hawaii looks to reduce its reliance on imported seafood, what role do regulations and disease control play in supporting or limiting the growth of our sustainable, locally focused aquaculture operations and industry?
Okay, so there are a broad range of state and federal regulations and regulatory frameworks covering multiple different areas of aquaculture. I think historically producers have been frustrated, and rightfully so in many cases. These regulations and frameworks are built theoretically and kind of with the intent of protecting our industries and our natural resources. And but there is sometimes a gap between the intent of the law and the actual application. And so one of the things, there's been quite a bit of focus recently, and I think one of the areas that we can put some more effort into moving forward is trying to update and build a little bit of adaptability into our regulatory frameworks here, especially those around animal movements, permitting, and animal movements, aquaculture permitting, and quarantine, disease surveillance, things like that. And I think that part of that may look like, we're very fortunate here. Hawaii has a roughly 800 to 1,000 year history of integrative adaptive management for food production, natural resources management, and conservation. And I think the Loko ia are part of that. And I think that serves as a really good model for both integrating and bringing all of the different community stakeholders, scientists, regulators, industry personnel, fishing industry personnel, together to work on addressing pathways forward and best practices that can actually be implemented. And so I think something that we might be able to do moving forward is look at how we can build some flexibility and adaptability into the regulatory framework with the specific goal of being able to change and address needs as they arrive in a more timely fashion. And right now, just the process of changing the rules and the regulations is extremely time consuming. It can take many, many years. Even if everyone is on board and wants to make the change, it can take years to effect those changes.
It's a good thing Senator Wakai is here. Thank you for that, Mika. Next question for Jeff. From your experiences in the classroom, what excites students most about aquaculture and or hydroponics? And how can we better connect that interest to real career pathways that support local food systems and communities? You alluded to that kind of connection issue.
And I left off well, I mean, I think what excites them the most is being part of the process of producing a product and creating their own space where they're creating something. And as a young kid, I got the hook of running my own little bait business. I used to capture my own bait, and it was a very successful business. And I caught the bug, and and then I said, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this, and it was addictive. And my students, when we were starting out building an aquaculture program at Waipahu, we ended up with a lot of tilapia at one point, and we had Chinatown coming up, and we were selling live tilapia once a week, and it was just it was a mini business. It was literally a mini business, and one of my students who was integral in that is working in the industry, caught the bug just like I did. And I have a ex-student here, sitting here, and he caught the bug. He was more of the engineering aspect of it and built the systems to grow the tilapia. So we had multiple systems in place to get students excited. And, after that, that's the hard part. It's like I said, leaving off at the last part of my first question was, where do they go from there? What do they do? There's no aquaculture apprentice program like Pearl Harbor has, where they can, 2,000 students apply to that and 200 get in, and it's a clear path. We don't have that. I'd love to see that. Love to see that, where they know, hey, I can make money in this business. Not that money is everything. Sorry, Brenda.
I can buy you some things. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like money is what is driving some of the things that we do, and you can't deny it. So that's part of the duality of, balancing environment, business concepts, cultural concepts. Like, it's all interwoven into what makes a good business here. We'll move on to Brenda. As interest in aquaculture grows, how can we ensure that expansion, if we're fortunate to do so, aligns with Ike Kupuna and continues to prioritize feeding local communities, rather than external markets?
I'm getting distracted at like the end of your response, because it was something I wanted to share. So I'll try not to forget it. But first, I want to say that I think to think about aligning with Ike Kupuna, it goes back to that relationship with Aina, and the idea that like reciprocity is directional, but we're taught that you give first, aloha aku, aloha mai, and so we need to care and malama before it feeds us. And I love that Neil shared like the ideas about appropriate management of resources, because we talk about in our organization that restraint and knowing what is enough is a traditional practice. And that is something that's an important lesson to take forward when we talk about expansion. We are in an island community. We have limited resources, period. And we also have to take care of each other. The whole like Artemis guys that came back, the woman, she said, Earth is a crew, and we're a crew here. And we have to take care of our people here, because otherwise, what is Hawaii if not we take care of our people? The thing about the profit the money that I wanted to share this thing, and I didn't know how to fit it in. So that was a good way for me to fit this in. Talking about Ike Kupuna, one of the kupuna in our network, his name is Leimana Naki. He's from Molokai, and the range of Loko in our network is like a big range of ohana, small nonprofits, bigger nonprofits, commercial enterprises, resource managers on resort properties. And he's been venturing into the nonprofit world, but he's still trying to understand what that means. And this was just a few months ago. He's talking to me, and he says, so nonprofit means you don't make a profit. And I try to say, well, it means you put it back into the organization. And then he says, but the work that we do creates more limu. And he's not talking about limu to sell, right? He's saying it creates more limu in the environment. And it creates more opihi. And it lets more pipipi grow. And it creates more i'a. And isn't that a profit? And I say, yeah, uncle, that's a profit. And then he says, and the work we do, it makes us strong people. We have strong bodies. We are strong people. Our spirits are healthy. We're healthy spiritually. Isn't that a profit? And I said, yeah, uncle, that's a profit. And that's like a really important lesson too.
Yeah, mahalo for sharing that. Fetty, last question. What role can offshore aquaculture play in reducing Hawaii's reliance on imported seafood while remaining environmentally responsible?
I think Neil did a great introduction on some of this, but I can add to it. We talked about food security and imports. That's a really critical component of this conversation. I'll say to add to that, one of the wonderful things that Hawaii has for offshore aquaculture is steady year-round temperatures. We can grow our fish on our site at basically the same rate, summer, winter, spring, fall. That's a really wonderful attribute of it, and really helps the energetics of the whole production process and helps sustainability. So there's some really wonderful aspects to that, and it's not only unique to Hawaii, but is certainly one of the great attributes here. Moving beyond, the environmental fit that Neil mentioned about the deeper waters, high energy waters, that is just a really critical component to the work that we do, and it's low impact. We have been under a magnifying glass for over 20 years. There's been a lot of work done on and around our sites to really understand the sustainability and environmental aspects, and it's been an incredible education for a lot of people in really understanding what is possible, and that is a really big component to who we are, and really help us understand where we can go from here. And finally, I'll just talk about the efficiency of the process itself. Not only does the ocean provide a lot of the oxygen and the power that otherwise we would have to pay for on land, which is really something that in Hawaii is a challenge. Now I know my power bills are a lot higher than I'd like them to be, and the work that we're doing has a very low land and freshwater usage for the work that we do, the tonnage of fish that we produce. So that's a big impact and a big positive in the conversation. I think those are the big ones that stand out to me.
Yeah, it's pretty alarming to hear just how much you have to pivot in these businesses just to be able to produce food with the rising changes in climate and the challenges we face with oil and all that. We were just having a discussion before this about rising costs of our goods and electricity, and it's more along those conversations of systems that don't depend on as much of those resources is kind of the direction we want to, I think, head in.
Can I add something else? Because it was related to my question about Ike Kupuna, but what you just said about the currents and stuff is connected. Another Kupuna in our network, Walter Riddy from Molokai also, that Aquaculture Society conference was here in 2020, right? And he was in the showroom, and some guy was telling him about this fancy thing that had pumps and did circulation and stuff. And after his spiel, Uncle Walter, and this is another lesson about how Ike Kupuna can inform expansion, right? He says, so basically what you're telling me is this thing does what the moon does with our tides. It's like, yes, that is true. And yeah, that innovation, but within the bounds of the deep knowledge of our systems, our natural systems, is really important.
Yeah, I mean, we're tapping back into that, so it's exciting times. Thanks for adding that. Thank you all for your thoughtful responses, panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. So I'm sure you guys all have questions. We're going to do a Q&A session right now. Yeah. Oh. All right. So Q&A, ask away. Raise your hand. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you represent, who you're coming with, who you bring with you tonight, and ask the question.
I just want to give a huge mahalo to you guys again. Aloha, my name is Kawai Hong. I'm the Fisheries Management Area Coordinator with Malama Maunalua. And we've done a lot of stuff with invasive species. Talking about food security, food sovereignty, and you guys also talk about imports, right? I think it was like 15,000 tons. I'm just curious about how much of like Hawaii's tastes and markets go to like the fish that you guys are looking at, farming in this aquaculture. Like how much of that 15,000 tons that's being imported is kampachi, moi, versus stuff that we can't sustainably grow here?
That's a really good question. I don't actually have the complete breakdown on that, but if you look at what are the seafood that is consumed, I know across the country, salmon and shrimp and tuna are the three biggest. Tuna is, I think we're net exporter of tuna here because we have the boats in the harbour, the long line boats. And that meets our needs, and I think it exceeds as well. A lot of tuna is shipped out of here, but for salmon and shrimp, it's all coming in from farmed product from elsewhere, and there's also a significant amount of tilapia that's consumed here, and that is, it could be farmed here. There are some farmers that are doing freshwater tilapia, but most of what you'll buy in retail outlets here is coming from Asia. Commercial farming in Asia. That's an opportunity for us where we could start to do more of that ourselves. And when I think about how we can supplant that 15,000 tons, I'm thinking about fish such as the kampachi and the moi, but then also you want to have something that's going to be comparable to the tilapia, but we could perhaps grow in the ocean where we can scale it up. And that's why we're working with the inanue, or the nanue, the chubs, because that's an herbivorous fish. Other panelists, Freddie, do you want to add something to that? What else would you want to grow if wishes were horses?
Good question. We've gone through quite a list through the years of attempts. Herbivorous fish is certainly one of the angles that my mind goes, just to balance out the plate.
That's a challenging one.
Yeah, I think that the invasive limu species that you're talking about, like this smother out Kaneohe Bay. It ain't going to work because you've got to be able to do this at scale. If you're going to be able to do it efficiently, so the product is affordable. If you're going to go and be catching tape or others, you might as well be eating those rather than turning those into fish food because it becomes less efficient. So yeah, we should be learning to eat the invasive species. But as much as I love eating roy when I'm in the Cook Islands, where they're safe, I wouldn't touch a roy here because of the ciguatera issues.
Thank you for answering that. We have time for one more question. Gentleman in the front here.
Aloha, my name is Anton Navanosian. I'm a high school teacher at Baldwin High School in Maui, and I teach marine science and am just starting an aquaculture program in my school, both in my classroom with our agriculture and culinary department. Do you guys have any resources or material that I could bring back to my school to further enhance the project and teach my students, like curriculum or material?
I'll take that. Wow. It's a great question. And that's one of the points that really need to be addressed. I mean, how does a teacher that doesn't have a background that I do want to do aquaculture? It's not easy. Thanks to CTSA and some grant, I can probably help you. Yes. So we'll have to be in touch, and I'd like to get over there, and yeah, we'll be in contact. I took all my students last year to Nelha, to Pack Rat and Hilo. We went to Rod and Wide Box facility, and we went to Kuala Ranch, and I think that's just a part of it. You know, the students don't know what exists out there. They don't know aquaculture exists other than, I don't know, if they drive by Kahuku and they see these ponds that haven't been in operation for I don't know how many years. So yeah, I'd love to help you, and I'm developing some real simple systems that you know, a teacher could use and not be complicated and simulate some hatchery stuff. Yeah.
I think Jeff's system's gonna blow your mind. Let's go see him after this. He's got some cool pictures. But I'm also gonna plug in Waianae High School. Dana Hoppy, yeah. Auntie Dana is also a resource that you'd probably want to connect with as well. So I think you guys are all in communication and somewhat working together, and I think more to come in terms of collaboration. Mika?
Also, come find me before we leave. There are a number of online resources available covering everything from basic fundamentals of design, like system design, all the way up to advanced biosecurity stuff. And I've worked on some of those with other collaborators across the U.S. Recently through things like CTSA projects and national USDA, some USDA funded projects, and I'll be happy to get you that information.
And I'd just like to reiterate what Jeff had said. In my experience, when we've had high school students come through, or university students come through our facility and do a tour, you can see their eyes go wide as their minds start to grasp the opportunities that are before them. I know that Fede at Blue Ocean Mariculture and our operation, we'd be happy to host students. If you know of any students that have interest, please tell them to speak up, reach out to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you can get in touch with Hawaii Aquaculture and Aquaponic Association. We're a good network affiliation.
A bunch of field trips.
It looks like our time is up, gents, and Wahine over here. Heartfelt thank you to our esteemed panelists. Neil Sims, thank you so much for giving us an awesome presentation on what Hawaii aquaculture could be looking like and looking forward to. And so feel free to reach out to these guys, you know, during the networking portion. We look forward to continuing this engaging conversation with you all. Mahalo nui.
Thank you, Anthony. Can we give our panelists one more round of applause? Thank you. So before we get to the eating and drinking portion, I just have a couple of announcements. Actually, the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation used to have an aquaponics program, and we're going to bring it back. So I want to just put it out there that Hawaii Ag Foundation has educational programs for students in the public schools. So if you're interested, please contact our organization because we have many, and we're going to bring another aquaponics program back. Secondly, our organization also offers monies or funding for field trips for kids to go on these types of excursions. So get in touch with Jenny at the Hawaii Ag Foundation. Okay, I have a couple of announcements. So as you know, it's raining today, and the last couple of weeks it's been raining, and we've had a tremendous amount of flooding and heavy rains that have damaged crops, and our farmers have been really hurt. And so the Hawaii Agriculture Foundation, along with the Hawaii Farm Bureau, is Brian here? Brian's here. We started a Hawaii Farmers Disaster Relief Fund, and to support the farmers that have had damage. I mean, so if you're able, we encourage you to contribute to the fund. There's QR codes on the table, and if not, you can visit our website at hawaiiagfoundation.org. The farmers really need it. It's tremendous losses that they've suffered. So I just wanted to mention that. On a lighter note, I'm excited to share that we are going to launch the first ever Lokalicious School Kitchen Cook-Off. And this is a statewide competition featuring Hawaii's incredible school kitchen and cafeteria workers. So this is a competition between different school cafeteria workers. It's co-sponsored by Hawaii Gas and the Hawaii Farm Bureau in partnership with the Department of Education. So I want to thank Keith Hayashi, he's here tonight as well, for helping us put this together. This contest invites cafeteria teams from Hawaii's Department of Education and public charter schools to create an original student-friendly dish featuring local beef. By the way, how many of you are educators here? Okay, so please go back and tell your cafeteria workers to sign up for these teams. They're going to be teams of 2, and the winning team is going to receive a $1,000 cash prize, a culinary experience at the Culinary Institute of America in Napa, a tour of the Culinary Institute of America at Greystone in St. Helena, California, and the winning dish will be featured on the Hawaii Department of Education 2027-2028 school lunch menu. So the competition deadline is April 30th. So they can go to our website, hawaiiagfoundation.org. This is really exciting. We have 8 teams signed up so far, and we're encouraging every school to participate. Okay, yes. Oh, Don. Okay, Brian just contributed $1,000, so make it $2,000 for the winning team. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Irish Shimabukuro of Kale Eggs. She's generously providing a dozen eggs for those of you who complete our Eat, Think, Drink survey. Your feedback is really important to us. We want to, learn about what you want to hear about. We want to know how it went. So please fill out the survey. Once you fill it out, you'll have instructions on how to pick up your eggs and so forth. The deadline to fill out the survey, by the way, is April 17th. And it is now my pleasure, I got to introduce the chefs, to introduce our talented chefs who have created dishes showcasing the incredible ingredients grown and raised through Hawaii's aquaculture industry, including kona limu. They are Brooks Tadena from Hawaii, from the Prince Waikiki, Bin No from Chao, Ronnie Nasudi of Tiki's Bar and Grill, and Chef Joe McGinn, a chef and regenerative agriculture educator, and he's also brought some of his friends from the CIA Workforce Development Program. So we're excited. We're excited to have all of them here. But before I close, one more thing. I just want to thank my small staff. I only have a staff of 6 people. It's Sarah, Jenny, Maddie, Liz, and Anne. We have a small team, so I want to thank them. And I want to thank you all for being here this evening. We have some amazing aquaculturalists in the audience. I see Jim Wyban, I see Hi'ile, I see Ron Weidenbach. There's probably many others that I'm missing, but there's a great opportunity for you guys to have good conversation tonight. Thank you, and enjoy.